Hello everyone, my name is Michael King. I'm a plein air and studio painter. Welcome to my studio. This is my third video now on how to paint looser, and we're going to apply the same principles here as we applied throughout them, and we're going to talk about painting transparent objects and liquids. And this is our subject, and obviously it's a transparent glass on a white background with a little bit of whiskey in it. But what's important here is everything that you see in this image is made up of a shape. So there's a dark shape, and there's a light shape, and just like my previous videos, this is how we're going to handle them. This image here was taken off pixabay.com. It's a resource for free and royalty-free images. Now the best way to help define shapes is just to out them with a Sharpie or a fine liner. So that's what I've done here, but this has been done in Photoshop. And so this easily shows a roadmap of painting by shapes. This shape has this value. There's another shape which has a little darker value. Then a shape beside it which is a little bit lighter. And so you go from large shapes to smaller shapes. So if you want, you can keep on going smaller and smaller and smaller. But I just wanted to show you the plan of seeing shapes to help you be able to paint transparent objects. And this really applies to anything you paint, from trees to grasses to portraits. Anywhere you can find a shape, as long as you can put the right value at the right temperature in that shape, and you keep on doing that for each shape that you see, eventually you'll have a painting. Now our next step is just to transfer the image of the glass onto our board. And I do highly recommend that you do sketch it on by hand because it imparts your unique style into the painting. I'm just going to sketch this on here, and I won't bore you with the details, so I'll fast forward. Now the key to painting transparency is just using these shapes that you've laid out and that you have on your reference photo. Basically, you find this shape, all right, you put in the right value of color, you put in the right temperature of color, and you put in the right hue of color. You put it in that shape, and then you leave it, all right? And then you move on to the next shape. You put in the right value, temperature, and hue in that shape, and move on to the next shape, and you just keep on going. And next thing you know, the painting is painted itself. So let's get started. So this is more of an orange liquor. Start with a yellow, maybe some transparent orange, and we'll do a little test. I think that that's against white. I think it's a little bit light. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of transparent red earth. All right, I'm going to put it in. Yeah, that's a little bit better. A little more rich there. So I'm just going to put in this shape. Excellent. And it kind of comes around. And we'll see if we have to adjust these values later because I am painting on white. So it looks like it's really dark. But once we get all the values around it, we'll have to reassess it. So I'm concernedly putting in a stroke and leaving it. I'm just not trying to wash everything in at once. Want that to come out a little bit further. And the beauty of this is, once someone sees this, they'll refer to it as the painting, and they'll never see your reference photo in your still life, so you don't have to worry about getting things immensely incorrect. That one has a little more red in it, so I'll just throw some more cad red into this one. It's a little hotter, a little warmer. Right? And just because you put a shape down doesn't mean you can't paint over it with the shapes around it later. So if it gets in a little big, that's okay. You can always put the shapes around it to cut it in. So there we are. Excellent. We can probably use this value as well up here. Now through the glass, the color is going to be a little more muted than when it's not going through the glass. So this color up here, or this value, should be a lot more richer. So I'm going to add a little more orange to help bring it out, the chroma of the color. So a little more orange. I'll bring that into there. We'll worry about the edge of the glass later. I mean, it's just more or less a gray. Now, if you want to have real fun, you can also count your strokes and try to do it with the least amount of strokes, and this will help you pay attention to how many strokes you're putting in instead of just laying paint in willy-nilly. Alright, and then there's a lighter yellow stroke here, but then up top there's a nice rich color. Mix a little more transparent orange in there. And put that in. I'm just doing this right now to get rid of some of the charcoal that's there. So now we're going to move into another area here. We're going to need to add some white. It's the same general orangey yellow. It's up to you which pigments you use. to get to it, and generally in here. Comes into here. This gets a little bit later on. This comes down into there. We have the liquid here. Kind of comes around like that. Might have that shape a little bit wrong, but we'll fix it in a minute. Alright, so we're going to mix a little more white in, and this is definitely lighter in here. It's definitely lighter down here. And as it comes through here, there's a little bit of white lightness as you come up. And this side is fairly light. And then there's this piece right there. And this piece right there. And below, or just above this, there's that line. Kind of splits that dark in half. I'll put that in as a reference for now. It tweaks down. I think a little more color in here. Alright, and this value in here is a little darker as it comes up. And as it comes over here. So sometimes when you're doing a painting like this, especially with all these shapes, don't get caught up at looking at it in this stage, because if you start focusing on what it looks at this stage, you're going to get caught up in how you're going to start to worry about how much it isn't really looking what you want it to look like. The key is to just keep on going at it, making sure you're adamant on just painting the shapes with one stroke at a time with the right value, temperature, and color. We'll worry about the little details later. In between here and there's a dark, and then there's a dark, and then this value, well, we can probably lighten it a bit, but it can go down. Put in a bit of my shadow, but that's okay. And then we'll go to a lighter yellowy orange at the bottom there. And you don't have to go from top to bottom, left to right. You can choose where you want to paint. So you get frustrated with one area, move to another. And you notice I'm not using like a number 0 round yet. I'm just a number 2 long flat. Pretty much the smallest you need. It's really light in here. Stroke it up. So if I'd laid that down and play with it a lot, I wouldn't get the sense of light through there. And over here as well. Just put it in. Change the direction of your stroke as well. Doesn't always have to be with the object. Violet in here. Now let's have some fun and paint those darks. So that dark is a real dark. It's really warm dark though. So I'm going to do some alizarin crimson, some transparent red earth, some ultramarine blue. So all transparent pigments. We have this shape here. Comes across. We have it in here. And there's some lines through it, but we'll worry about those finer shapes that go through this bigger shape a little later. And we have a line going through here. Stops. Here we are. Nice. Put that shape in. There's actually a shape up here below the rim. And even though that's a nice thin shape, I'm going to use this number 2 flat just to put it in so I can keep it loose. And my hand is moving a little bit. It's not perfectly controlled, which is fine because the shapes in the glass themselves are quite arbitrary. You never have to have the exact same shape. In this instance, close enough is good enough. Now in a portrait, you would probably have to be a little more precise. This is a large gray area in here. We have one little line here. That'll probably get covered up later, but we'll just put that dark in here. This one shape here comes down and that line gets, oops, a little bit too light. Thins out that line there. So in this instance, I'm using another color to cut into that shape, into this bottom shape, so that that shape is right. So sometimes you got to go back over something, but you're just laying in color, a little bit at a time. So now we got to have to go to a lighter orange again. I want to finish these sides. We have this shape in there, a shape down here. A little more yellow than it is orange. So we'll just lay this in. There we are. More yellow in there. So right value, right temperature, right location. We try to do our best. And then here it's quite light. Got some color between there. Worry about the smaller lines in a bit, but for now, that's all fine. This underneath here is actually a little darker of value, and I'll make it a little more orange. There we are. We have some side pieces here. Now our next step is going to paint some of the grays I see in the glass. So I'm just going to mix a gray, ultramarine blue, transparent red earth, and some white. And in this instance I will mix it on the cool side. And it's really light, it's very subtle. A little bit dark, I'd say. And what we can do when this is dry is I'll be able to rub off all this charcoal here. So I'm just going to fill that in. So this is just ambient light. If there was more in this environment, chances are we would see more colors in this glass. This comes into there like that. This comes in more like that. Make that edge soft if you want. And in here, this edge comes down. Get a little more form. This comes up over this dark. This one comes underneath that dark. This starts going around it. And then we have another small piece under here. There we go. And of course this bottom is pretty much filled in with this value as well. For now, a stroke. Stroke. There we are. And we can see that the outside edges are a little lighter. So I'll mix in some more white and just put that value where I see it. See it here as well. See it down here. See some highlights here. This is starting on the rim. And as you get your shapes smaller and smaller, lo and behold, everything starts to come out. shape there. We'll go in with this shape here. We do have some spots of darker gray where there's some occlusion in the glass. So right in there. We want to keep the edges nice and soft. Stroke down and leave it. No blending. Now just for continuity's sake, I can't really leave this white because I've started adding the grays in here as well. So what we have to do is we have to use a really light gray in here. But first I'll just finish off this section over here. So I'll just mix a nice light gray, and it's lighter over here and it gets slightly darker over here, but not by much. So we can just pretty much fill in this area here. It's one of the largest areas. But still, concerted effort for your strokes. There we are. And I'll get really light. Go on this other side. There we go. Looks like I have a little color mixed into that. Wipe my brush. Go in there and I see it coming down like that. There we are. It comes across. Excellent. Maybe we can use some of this lighter color or lighter light in the glass itself, where we see some more occlusions. We definitely see some right beside this dark. Just put that in there. Approach this differently. Instead of stroking it in one way, we'll stroke it in the other way. That way we can control the shape a little bit better. So now we're going to focus on the rim of the glass. I'll move over to a thin round rigger brush, and I'm going to get the darks in around the edges. So we'll go to our darker pigment, same dark pigment that we had down below here, maybe a little bit of white. We'll do a test. Yeah, it looks good. This is where you have to make a concerted effort to look and see, and this helps. What it does is it helps you see what you're painting and focus on putting it down on the canvas or your board in the correct shape and color. It helps you push yourself to actually concentrate instead of just saying, oh, it kind of goes here. Because in this instance, for this rim, it's very important where we put this. I'll have to go thin. It gets thick. A little thicker. Alright, and then the rest of this is a lighter gray. You can see it will go lighter gray, lighter until this is the lightest gray. And there's a little white highlight in there. So I'll add some white to this mixture that I have. Starts over here. Just comes over. Try to do the best stroke we can. Go over it another time just to smooth it out. Excellent. Stuff like this, leaving that little gap there, that's fine. It helps create like a highlight that may or may not be there. We'll lighten that one last time, and we'll put a stroke over here. There. That could have been a little bit lighter, so I'll mix a lighter one. Good. And we'll continue on here with that. And now we will do in through here where this rim passes over the liquid. I think it's a little darker in the center. And it gets lighter at the ends. This lip is a little wonky. Bring it out a little bit to help with the shape. Get that even lighter. There we are. We have a little bit of a wonky lip shape, so we could try to fix that. We can come in with our lighter mixture of our background color. Put that in. This would have been our center line. So it needs to come down there. Kind of fix it, get rid of it, I guess, in a sense. Come back in with a value. See if we can get this right. Still a little bit wonky. See if we can play with that. We got some highlight here. A lot of white, a tiny bit of yellow for this highlight. Add some of this highlight here. Okay, starting to come together. Now we're going to just go through all the different shapes again and adjust the values. And some of the chroma too. That's a little richer chroma for that. Comes in. I'm primarily using the rigger brush here for more control with these smaller shapes. Good. Here. A little one over there. This dark over here is incorrect, so we'll try to just paint over it. At least it'll subdue it a bit. There we go. But had I not pointed it out, I don't know if you guys would have even noticed. Take some of this highlight color here, bring it in. And I think this value in here could be a little richer. Mix up something a little more chromatic. And of course, now we need it a little darker. So it's a back and forth, right? Mix, test, paint. Mix, test, paint. There we go. I like that a little bit better. This in here will really jump up the pigment chroma here. And so you pick your right value, a little bit darker, more alizarin crimson. Brings it more on the red side, but I think that's the value we're looking for. So the color isn't 100% important. It's more of the value and the temperature. So put that in there. Comes up. Meets with that, but it also kind of just blends out to that side. And it comes through here. A few spots of it there, especially up here. Odd mixing going in. There we go. Fixed it. We got some small ones here. So as you get into the smaller aspects of all these little marks, you'll notice it really starts to come together. Some darker areas here and there. This value here should be a lot warmer and darker. So I'll just put that in, using my hand as control. Alright, something a little bit better here. We got some lines coming across. Pretty simple, just following the pattern as close as you can. Remember, you don't have to be exact. I think I want to darken up that shape here, and if you find a little bit too dark, let's just lighten that up a bit. Too much white, go back to the darker. Sometimes it takes a few back and forths, but value is more important than anything else, so it's worth it. And each time I'm putting down a stroke, I'm putting on a stroke on more paint, on more paint. I'm not trying to blend them together or anything like that. And this is a really hard edge here. So, and now for the shadow, what we're going to do is we're going to mix just a nice, very light blue. So a little bit of cobalt, a little bit of white. We don't want the shadow overpowering. It's just there. A little more blue to get some chrome out of it, but we need it light. So it's a fine balance. What we want to do as well is we want to keep it soft. So we'll add a little more white, and we'll just soften these edges. If you want, you can take a rag and bring it up, and that'll create a nice soft edge. bring a little bit in more. Nice blue as it comes up. Just a feeling of a shadow. Blend that in, cut that edge. That's all we really need there. To bring the edge a little bit to life, what we'll do is we'll come up here with our mixture of white and yellow. Put in a nice highlight. There we go. Might have to go a little bit more white. There's only so much you can do here because we're on a white background. Add a little impasto. The impasto will help bring out what looks like highlights in the glass. Very, very, very rarely do I use pure white, but in this instance, it's white coming right out of the tube. Just for these impasto marks. There we go. I think what I want to do is just soften a little bit of some edges in between some colors. So this dark or this light gray down here, I just want to, it seems a lot lighter in this area here right now. So the light against that orange I find reads better. I can sort of see it in the image as well. That's why painting from life is so important, because you get to see this stuff instead of being on a photo. When photos, they always darken the lights and lighten the darks, so you can't really win. I'll put some light there. Maybe I'll add a little kiss of light there. And whenever you consider it done, just add a little signature. There we go. A couple more dabs of dark, just to bring out just a little more depth in these areas that I see. Give it that illusion of complexity. Excellent. This is how I go about painting transparent objects such as glass and liquids. I just pick shapes, put in the right value, temperature, and hue in the right shape, and I'm moving from shape to shape, and eventually you have a very painterly essence of transparency. I encourage you to give this a try. It'll help train you into painting looser and not being caught up in all the details, especially on transparent objects such as glass or liquids. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, follow me on Instagram at michaelking.ca. Hit that like button, and if I've earned it, subscribe. Cheers! You've watched this to the very end? Really?